hostages. Hostages.
They're a dead giveaway.
Exactly. So thanks so much. I'm Duncan. I'm the California Director of Americans for Safe Access, which is a nationwide medical cannabis advocacy organization. And I'm also a resident of Los Angeles, and have been sort of fighting shoulder and shoulder with Yami and the other activists there in the very controversial work for an ordinance in Los Angeles. And one of the things I always like to remind people when I speak publicly is the good news right up front, is that it's really amazing how far we've come in 15 years. We've been at this over 15 years now, and I remember the first time I was in the Bay Area, and somebody told me that this man named Dennis Perone was going to put this on the ballot, and we were going to legalize medical marijuana. I thought, well, that will never fly. And I think most of us thought that back in 1994 and 1995. And here we are with medical cannabis legal in 15 states, District of Columbia, and we have broader access around the state of California than we ever had before. I remember another time when I was sitting up in Berkeley, operating a collective and just dipping my toes into politics and thinking, well, this is really great, but they'll never, ever have this in Southern California. And little by little, we're making inroads, and we're getting there. So we're doing really great in that regard. And if the measure of success of a medical cannabis program is that patients get their medicine, we're probably doing better than anyone in the state. So don't believe that Wild West nonsense you see that some of our well-meaning allies say, because patients in California are getting their medicine. And that means our law is working. And if we need to clean it up a little around the edges, that's great. But patients get their medicine, and that matters. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we don't live in a symbolic medical marijuana state. We live in a state where patients get medicine. But we have a lot more to do. And one of the things that's a challenge right now is that we are seeing a huge backlash against medical cannabis. When I was in Sacramento in 2008, we were already seeing the beginning of it. It's all about shady dispensaries and patients who don't look sick and that sort of thing. We went back in 2010 to pass a Senate joint resolution. And it was even worse. They didn't even want to talk about a non-binding resolution on medical marijuana because of this perception that doctors are too lenient and patients aren't sick and dispensaries are out of control. And I just got back last week from Sacramento, where I was talking to Democrats about SB 129, which will protect patients from employment discrimination, from being fired or denied a promotion or denied a job because they use medical cannabis. And even the moderate Democrats are afraid of this issue right now. And so we've got some work to do to roll back that backlash and rebuild that base of support that we had back in 1994 and 1995 before the initiative campaign, and that base we had back in 2003 when we adopted SB 420 with all of its pluses and minuses. And so I think if there's anything that we can do right now that would help push the state of California in the right direction, it's to re-engage those elected officials. I can't believe how many times I walk into an office in Sacramento and say, you've probably been hearing from your constituents about this employment problem. And they're like, nope. They just don't hear. If we can get back up to those levels that we were before, where they weren't hearing about anything else except for medical cannabis, we're going to be able to shake loose that backlash and finish up this work of implementation. And a big part of that is going to be adopting comprehensive legislation next year in 2012 for medical cannabis. And so I would really love to have everyone's help on that when we take a bill to Sacramento in 2012 that will finally regulate collectives and cooperatives as far as licensing goes. So there won't be any questions if they're legal or not. We'll be able to handle that at the state level. And legislation that will finally protect growers. I know there are a lot of people here who grow medical cannabis, and you guys are in the absolute highest risk of anyone in the state of California, and so little progress has been made protecting people who grow medical cannabis. And so we're bringing a bill next year that's in draft phase that will finally settle the issue of how do we regulate medical cannabis cultivation in the state of California. Obviously, lawmakers and police officers want regulation, and we would rather stay in a safe place. And so our bill has a stair-step approach to that. We're going to start and say if you're a collective or cooperative of 25 patients or fewer that are growing your marijuana together, you just get to do it. You don't have to register, you don't have to ask permission, you just get to grow. If you're in the
Cubby's ideas with that initiative?
No, well, this is a bill and not an initiative. But in the second stage of our bill, in stage 2, if you're growing for 25 to 50 patients, we understand they have public safety concerns. We're going to ask collectives and cooperative cultivation projects to register with the state, not ask for permission, just register so they can feel comfortable that legal medicine's coming from legal collective grows out to the patients. And then if you have a collective or cooperative that's growing for 50 or more patients, then of course we would have a statewide licensing program. So large commercial operations like the kind that Oakland tried to launch would still have a regulatory framework to make politicians feel comfortable, even though cannabis cultivation shouldn't be that controversial, it is. And so we're hoping with that approach that we can protect the rights of the patients to grow, we can provide a little public safety, and we can give the politicians a safe place to move forward, and finally protect the medical cannabis growers. And remember, our federal government says, such as we can believe our federal government, that if you obey your state law, you're not going to get busted. And so if we cannot hold them to that, then of course our regulated, licensed, permitted medical cannabis cultivators may finally be safe for enforcement. So that's what's coming up in 2012, and I would love it if everybody could help us push that bill through. And the only way we're going to do it is if every district around the state, if every assembly member and every senator is hearing from people like you about the legislation. So please help me with that.
Good.